My name is Elena Cross. I'm 36 years old, and I'm sitting at the defense table in Cook County Civil Court. My hands folded neatly in front of me, my face calm enough to pass for indifference. Across the aisle, Mark and Lillian Cross are laughing quietly with their attorney. They look relaxed, confident, almost cheerful. Mark keeps leaning back in his chair, crossing his arms like a man who believes he already knows how the story ends. Lillian keeps smoothing the sleeve of her blazer, rehearsing grief the way an actress rehearses lines. They think this is going to be easy. They think they're about to walk out of this courtroom with $5.5 million. They don't recognize me. Not really. To them, I'm just the woman who inherited something that should have been theirs. A technicality, a mistake the law is about to correct. Then the courtroom doors open behind us. The bailiff steps forward and raises his voice. All rise. Everyone stands. The judge enters. She settles behind the bench, adjusts her glasses, and looks down at the case file in front of her. Then she speaks. Case number 23 CV 4481, Cross versus Cross. Mark and Lillian straighten in their seats. Finally, the judge looks up. Her eyes land on me. Ms. Elena Cross, she says calmly, please stand. I do. Mark's smile falters. Lillian's breath catches. Because now they're looking at me properly for the first time. And they're starting to understand something is wrong. Before I tell you how this ends, I want to ask you something. If your parents abandoned you as a child, then returned decades later to sue you for millions, would you forgive them? Or would you let the truth destroy them? Before we continue, I want to know where you stand. If your parents abandoned you at 5 and came back decades later for money, would you forgive them? Or let the truth destroy them? Type forgive or destroy in the comments. It happened in 1993, at Midway Airport, on a gray November afternoon that smelled like jet fuel and burnt coffee. I was 5 years old. I remember that detail clearly because I was old enough to know something was wrong, but not old enough to understand what. I was wearing a blue knit scarf that my grandmother had made for me. It was too long, and it dragged against the dirty linoleum as I walked. I didn't mind. I liked the weight of it. It made me feel anchored. Mark and Lillian walked ahead of me through the terminal. They weren't holding my hands. They were checking their watches. They kept moving quickly, like people late for something important, not like parents traveling with a child. We passed families hugging at departure gates, kids crying, announcements echoing overhead. Finally, we reached the baggage claim area. It was loud and industrial. Conveyor belts rattled, metal bins clanged. Mark stopped in front of a metal bench bolted to the floor. Sit here, he said. I climbed onto the bench. Lillian pointed at the carousel. Watch the bags, she said. We need to talk to the airline. How long? I asked. She didn't look at me. Count the bags, she said. When you get to 300, we'll be back. I nodded. I trusted them. They turned and walked away. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. Suitcases slid past, golf clubs, strollers, a guitar case. I counted slowly, carefully. At 50, the crowd thinned. At 100, the announcement stopped. At 200, the carousel's rhythm became hypnotic. By the time I reached 300, the belt shuddered, then stopped. The lights dimmed slightly. The terminal grew quiet in that hollow way only empty public places do. I sat there, my scarf pulled up over my mouth, and waited. That was when it happened. The realization. Not panic, not fear. Understanding. They weren't delayed. They weren't lost. They weren't coming back. The look on their faces when they walked away hadn't been worry. It had been relief. They hadn't lost me. They had left me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat very still, because something inside me shut down, and silence took its place. A security officer found me nearly an hour later. He crouched in front of me and asked where my parents were. I couldn't answer. I didn't know how. Before he could call it in, another man stepped forward. He had been watching from a distance. He was tall, neatly dressed, with silver-rimmed glasses and tired eyes. "I saw them leave," he said quietly. He knelt in front of me. Didn't touch me. Didn't lie. "They aren't coming back," he said gently. "My name is Robert Hale." That honesty saved me. The police came, then social services, and Robert stayed. He stayed through the paperwork, through the interviews, through the foster placement. Then he stayed longer. Robert wasn't rich, at least, he didn't look like it. He lived in a modest brick house. He drove an old sedan. He packed lunches and helped with homework. He listened when I couldn't speak. For years, I barely talked. He never pushed. He understood silence. He told me once, "Silence can be armor, or it can be a prison. You'll decide which one it becomes." He adopted me when I was 8, legally, permanently. He never changed my last name. "You already lost enough," he said. Robert died on a Tuesday morning. Quietly. No drama. Just a heart that stopped after a life that had given everything. At the reading of the will, I expected his house. Maybe some savings. Instead, the attorney slid a thick folder across the table. Robert Hale wasn't just a retired compliance auditor. In the 1980s and 90s, he had quietly taken equity instead of fees. Startups, tech firms, logistics software, 3 of them went public. Robert lived simply so he could give generously. The final number stunned me. $5,500,000. 2 days later, the story hit the news. Local woman insert hidden fortune. That was the beacon. 48 hours later, the knock came at my door. Not condolences. A lawsuit. Mark and Lillian Cross versus Elena Cross. Claims: fraudulent inheritance, unlawful custody, undue influence, estate theft. They alleged Robert had abducted me, that they had searched for decades, that they had never stopped loving me. They demanded the entire estate, plus damages. I didn't cry. I didn't call them. I read the complaint like a case file, and something stood out. To normal parents, a child is a person. To Mark and Lillian, I was a ledger entry. At 5, I was a liability. At 36, I was an asset. They weren't back for me. They were back for the money. I hired Dana Morales, a forensic accountant. "Go back to 1993, I told her. "Find everything." 3 days later, she called me at midnight. "Elena," she said, "they didn't just abandon you. They monetized it." She had found a civil lawsuit filed in 1994, Cross versus Midwestern Airways. Mark and Lillian claimed they had entrusted me to an airline agent as an unaccompanied minor. They alleged negligence, emotional distress, wrongful loss. The airline settled quietly. $425,000. Attached was a sworn affidavit. They had signed it, declaring me presumed deceased, accepting full compensation, waiving all future claims. They had legally declared me dead, for cash. Back in court, Mark and Lillian performed beautifully. Tears, trembling voices, 30 years of grief. I let them talk. Then my attorney stood. Defense calls Rachel Cross, their younger daughter, the one they kept. Rachel took the stand. She didn't look at them. "They didn't miss Elena," she said quietly. "They used her." She described fundraisers, church donations, sympathy money. She produced casino receipts, dated the week I disappeared. While police searched airports, my parents gambled. The courtroom went silent. Then my attorney placed the affidavit on the bench. The judge read it. Her face hardened. "You declared your daughter dead," she said slowly, "and accepted money for it." She looked up. "Either you committed fraud then, or perjury now." Their lawyer stepped back. I stood. "You sold me," I said calmly. "You didn't lose me. You cashed me in." The gavel fell. "Case dismissed with prejudice. Bailiff, escort the plaintiffs." They were indicted weeks later. The money was gone. So was the sympathy. I used the inheritance to create the Hale Foundation, legal aid for abandoned children, advocacy for foster youth. Because no child should ever sit alone at a baggage claim, wondering if they matter. 6 months later, Rachel and I sat in a cafe, building something real. I wore the old blue scarf, not for warmth, for remembrance. I wasn't the girl who was left behind. I was the girl who was caught. I'm curious, did justice win in your eyes, or should the punishment have been harsher? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.